Hey everyone, welcome to the Unit 4 semester exam review. It's going over quadratic equations and complex numbers. So, on the left side here for the we do section, consider solving x squared minus 10x minus 27 equals 0 by completing the square. What is the number that goes in the blanks? Okay, completing the square formula, pretty simple formula, b over 2 squared. What's your b term? That's the number by the x, so there's a little typo here. It should say minus 10x. So you're going to take the minus 10, keep the sign with it, but it's in parentheses, so you square it, it'll always be positive. The answer is always positive. So this is going to be positive 25. So adding 25 to this side and then adding 25 to the other side would complete the square. And that's it for this question, but just for the sake of it, the final expression would look like this. Remember, you need to factor it. Since it's a perfect square trinomial, the factors of 25 that add up to negative 10 are negative 5 and negative 5, because that's the square root of 25, 5 or negative 5. So I'm going to write this as x minus 5 squared equals, and 27 plus 25 is 52. And so that's it, completing the square. So yeah, 2a. Solve this for all complex numbers. Anytime it says complex numbers, it means you're going to have an I there, an imaginary solution. So let's see what's going on here. See, I have an x squared, a negative x squared here. I don't like having a negative x squared, and not everything's on one side. So instead of minusing 13 over here, I'm actually going to add x squared over there, and then minus 4x over there. It's always easier when your x squared is positive. So I'm going to have x squared minus 4x, and it was a positive 13, so plus 13 equals 0. So let's solve for the complex numbers. All right, so can this factor? Are there factors of 13 that add up to negative 4? 13 is a prime number. The only factors of 13 are 13 and 1, and whether you make them negative, 1 negative or not, it's just not going to work out, so don't worry about that. We're going to focus on completing the square here. So when you complete the square, you're going to minus that third number, whatever it is, to the other side. All right? And let me get this other stuff out of the way. Okay, so now I have x squared minus 4x equals negative 13. You're going to use that negative 4, the negative b over 2a formula. So let's see, negative 4 over 2a. What am I thinking? Oh, I'm thinking axis of symmetry. It's just b over 2 squared. So negative 4 over 2 squared is 4. So it's going to say x squared minus 4x plus 4. What you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So equals negative 13 plus 4. So let's factor this side. It's going to turn into x minus 2 squared because it's the square root of 4 is 2 or negative 2. I'll use negative 2 because it's a negative 4. Negative 2 plus negative 2 is negative 4. So x minus 2 squared equals negative 9. All right, so I'm solving for x here. Then I can square root it. Remember, anytime you square root something, you have a plus or minus answer, whether it's a negative number or not. Remember, if you square root a negative, it just means you have an I by it. So the square root of positive 9 is plus or minus 3, and the square root of negative 9 is plus or minus 3i. So I have x minus 2 equals plus or minus 3i, and then you add 2 to the other side, and you get x equals, so I'll go write the 2 first, so positive 2 plus or minus 3i, and that's the final answer. That is solving it across complex numbers. All right, for all complex numbers, I should say. So, yay. Find the difference of 2 plus 3i and 4 minus 7i. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to just rewrite this 2 plus 3i minus 4 minus 7i. There was a question like this on a test earlier in the 6 weeks, and it was worded like this, and a lot of people missed it because they did not distribute the negative. They thought, oh, they did the 2, what's 2 minus 4? So look, once you distribute the negative, you don't need the parentheses anymore. So minus 4, and then it becomes plus 7i. So a lot of people did the first step right of doing 2 minus 4. That would be negative 2. But then they did 3 minus negative 7 and 3 minus 7, and that's negative 4. But 3 minus negative 7, it becomes 3 plus 7. So you have plus 10i. And that's the final answer for that. Okay? Solve this. I have a square there. Let's undo that. Square root both sides. So 2p plus 5 equals plus or minus 4. Remember, anytime you square root, put that plus or minus sign there. So now let's see here. Let's minus 5 to the other side. And we have 2p equals negative 5 plus or minus 4. So I'm going to make two equations here. I have 2p equals negative 5 plus 4, and then I have 2p equals negative 5 minus 4. All right, so this is going to say 2p equals negative 1. This one's going to say 2p equals negative 9, and then I'll divide by 2, and I will get, let's see here, I'll get p is negative 1/2. And then this one's p is negative 9 over 2, or negative 4.5. Yeah, that's it for that. Just don't leave it like this. Negative 5 plus or minus 4. You can do that. You can do that math. I just did negative 5 plus 4 and negative 5 minus 4. And then all I had to do was divide by 2. So, yeah, that's all there is to say about that one. So, these are numbered wrong, 4a to 4a. Who cares? Express the product in standard form. All right. Make sure you multiply everything. So, what's 3 times negative 2? That's negative 6. What's 3 times negative I? That's negative 3i. What is 3i times negative 2? That's going to be negative 6i. What is 3i times negative I? That's negative 3i squared. All right? So let's combine like terms here. And that's going to say negative 6 minus 9i minus 3i squared. And there's more combining that I can do. I just need to talk about I squared for a second here. So I is, by definition, the square root of negative 1. So if I were to go in and I were to square I, then I would square the square root of negative 1. So if you square a square root, both things go away. The square root goes away, the power of 2 goes away, you're just left with that number. So if I square the square root of negative 1, I'm left with negative 1. So this is saying negative 6 minus 9i minus 3 times negative 1. So that's negative 6 minus 9i plus 3 now. And now look, I have two other like terms I can add. In standard form means you write the regular number first. So negative 6 plus 3 is negative 3. And then minus 9i. You put the I number second. And that is how you would multiply those two binomials together. All right, let's move on to the back. Okay, so if the discriminant is negative, how many solutions the equation will have? How many solutions will the equation have? Okay, if it's negative, you'll have two solutions. Will you be able to see them? No. But if you use your imagination, you'll be able to see them because they're imaginary solutions. Because if the discriminant is negative, you're ending up taking the square root of a negative number. because the discriminant is b squared minus 4ac, and that's part of the quadratic formula. All right, and so if this number ends up being negative, you're taking the square root of a negative number, which is why you're going to get an imaginary solution. So if the discriminant's 0, how many solutions will the equation have? You'll have not 0 solutions, not 2 solutions, you have 1 solution, because it's saying negative b plus or minus 0. So negative b plus 0 is still negative b, and negative b minus 0 is still just negative b. So it's not changing that value. So you're going to have the same answer twice. So you'll have 1 solution, but it'll be a real solution. So you either have real solutions or imaginary solutions. I don't know if there's any other kind of solutions. You could say, oh, complex solutions, but complex solutions are technically imaginary ones. So yeah. Solve the equation by completing the square. All right, so if you see a number in front, you can just divide that out. If you forget to divide it out first, you can do it the second step or something, I don't know, but just divide out that front number first. Like, technically you're dividing everything by 6, so divide the 0 by 6, it's still 0. So this is going to say t squared plus 4t plus 9 equals 0, all right? So now we're going to minus 9 to the other side, and we have t squared plus 4t equals negative 9, and so we're going to do the b over 2 squared formula, so 4 over 2 squared is 4. So I'm going to say x plus 2 squared. Oh, I just changed t to x. So t plus 2 squared equals, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let me go back. So you're going to use that 4, and you're going to have t squared plus 4t plus 4 equals negative 9 plus 4. All right, so the factors of 4 that add up to 4 are 2 and 2. The square root of 4 is positive 2 or negative 2. You're going to use positive 2 because it's a positive 4 in the middle. So that's why I started writing t plus 2 squared. And then negative 9 plus 4 is negative 5. So t plus 2 squared equals negative 5. So we just need to solve it. So I'm going to rewrite it up here. All right, and I can square root both sides. And I'm going to have t plus 2 equals plus or minus. And so it's the square root of 5 is the square root of 5. But you wouldn't leave it as the square root of negative 5. You could take that I on the outside and say it like that. And now it's positive. Okay, that's the only way the square root of negative 5 will simplify, is by putting an I on the outside, and now it has the square root of 5 on the inside. So all you have to do from here is just minus 2, and t is going to equal negative 2 plus or minus I square root 5. Final answer. All right, got a couple left. Sorry, this video is going to run a little bit long. Okay, so number 7, the quickest and easiest way to do this is by using the calculator. In the previous video, I did do some systems of equations problems, and we solved them by hand. So I'm just going to go over the calculator method on this. What you want to do is you want to type both of these into your graph. Okay, so let me pull up the picture of the graph. Okay, so you're going to want to type them into your graph, and then you're going to want to get the intersection of the two. And so those are my two answers right there. Now, how do you get that? Let's go over how you get that in TI Inspire. So the first thing you'll do is type them into a graph page, and what you'll do next is as follows. You'll need to press the menu button. You'll need to go to number 6, analyze the graph, and go to the intersection. And then it's just a matter of highlighting, and clicking, and then repeating the process again for the other side. And that's all there is to it, all right? So, number 8, solve x by factoring. Okay, what are the factors of 60 that add up to 16? I know 60 is 10 times 6, and 10 plus 6 is 16. So I'm going to say x plus 10 times x plus 6 equals 0. See, so you just flip the answers. That was my phone going off again. Hey, I got some money on eBay. Anyway, I should really put that thing on silent. So, flip the signs. X will equal negative 10, and x will equal negative 6. That's an and symbol, okay? Don't hate on my and symbol. That's it. You just have to flip the signs, because what can you plug in that'll make this go to 0? I could plug in a negative 10 here, and that'd make this all go to 0. Or I'd plug in a negative 6 here, and that'd make it all go to 0. So, yeah. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Just make sure everything's on one side, and it's equal to 0 before you start factoring. Okay, last problem. Simplify the following in simplest form. Okay, so what's the square root of 49? That's plus or minus 7. What's the square root of negative 49? Plus or minus 7i. The most common mistake I hear people make is I ask them, what's the square root of negative 49, for example? Let's just keep using this. And they're like, well, I'll say, what's the square root of 49? And they're like, 7. And then I'll say, okay, what's the square root of negative 49? And they go, negative 7? So no, it's just 7i. And then don't forget your plus or minus, okay? Now, you have negative 4 times the square root of negative 200. So we're going to write that negative 4 down, and we're going to split up negative 200 into two numbers that we that can have a square root. So I know that 100 times 2 is 200, and I know that 100 has a square root. So you want to use the biggest number you can that has a square root. So 200 has a lot of factors into it, like 25 times 8. 25 has a square root, but it's not as big as 100. All right, and so then I just keep the negative by the number that has a square root. So here's what it's going to look like. The square root of negative 100 would be plus or minus 10i. And then everything else just carries down. So the square root of negative 2 and then negative 4. And it's all multiplying together. So I don't know if it makes it easier to understand if you put it all in like parentheses like this. What's negative 4 times plus or minus 10i? It's going to turn into plus or minus 40i. And then you have the square root of 2 on the outside. So, yeah, it's a little tricky, kind of simplifying ones like this. Just know that negative 4 times positive 10 is negative 40i. Negative 4 times negative 10i is positive 40i. See, so you still have that plus or minus there, because you're like, what happened to this negative? Can't you say negative plus or minus? That's just redundant. So that's what I'm trying to say here. So I hope this video helped. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.